glorious son of a bitch?
Good afternoon. I hope you're having a glorious day in Sydney.
Mate,
it's beautiful here in Queensland.
I'm just admiring your thick, manly beard that seems to be coming in stronger than last week. And I know we've been talking for about 20 minutes now, and I've been holding off on saying it because I needed it captured and permanently on the internet that I'm envious of your magnificent beard, mate.
Well, this is my daughter Alex's plan for me. Instead of Movember, this is no shave November as far as she's concerned. So I have been steadily doing exactly what she wanted from the beginning of the month. It's kind of very solid. It's really irritating.
That's going to be super handy for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, if you want to get out, just start grinding your stubble all over someone's neck. That's got to be like sandpaper.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sneaky.
I actually heard the most fascinating thing from one of my coaches on Friday morning. He said, you know, if you can't get out, just stick your fist right into the edge of their TMJ. Hurts like a bitch, but it can't really do any real injury. It just hurts a lot. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, you didn't just say that.
That's it. Can't do any damage. Let me stop you right there.
I chose to leave that one alone, especially with grading coming up. I'm trying to stay in the good books and not dismiss my head coach's statement. But yeah, can't really wind up the trigeminal nerve whatsoever at that moment in time.
TMJ issues.
Yeah.
Glorious. What are your thoughts on that? Because I do get... You get some patients where, like, okay, you've got an obvious jaw movement asymmetry. Neuro control versus mechanical adhesions?
Well, that opens some cans of worms. So I'd look at both. My original kind of background was in kind of sacrooccipital technique, cranial TMJ. So we'd look at things like hyoid bone displacement, neuromuscular inappropriate tension under the jaw itself.
For those listening at home, the hyoid bone is a little bone that floats above your throat. It's not attached to anything. It's just all muscles attached on it, which is why it's interesting because it's like
It's around the Adam's apple as well, and it kind of sits there, and the muscles under your jawline actually pull off it to open. So if it's sitting kind of displaced at all, when you go to actually open your mouth, the muscles will pull inappropriately in the direction, and it'll pull your jaw off to one side. So other things that'll do it, of course, is if the person has an inappropriate or dysfunctional bite. So teeth displaced in funny positions, too much chewing on one side, grinding at night will absolutely do it. And then that comes down to, is there a respiratory problem? Is there an airway problem? Are they clenching to try and keep that airway open at night? Have they been a thumb-thucker right throughout their childhood, and that's developed a bite problem? And you know, there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it. And then you get those fight-flight patternings and neurological disturbances that the mesencephalon will do, which are activating all your anterior throat muscles, pulling the jaw into really, really funny positions and weakening off all your neck muscles. And then you just think about it from what BJJ does to you, which is, of course, teach you to activate your cervical, your anterior neck muscles and your submandibular muscles, and really deactivate all your neck muscles as you're kind of hunching down into a defensive position. And one way or the other, that cannot be very good for your jaw anyway.
My OT, Abe, who's well into his BJJ as well, was telling me all about this really high-level grappler that he said, what's his name? Gordon something.
Gordon Ryan?
Yep, that's the one. And I started following him on Insta, and like, there's all these shots of him with his shirt off, and that man has the most hiked upper trap that I've seen in a good long while. So yeah, perfect BJJ posture, but Jesus, that's going to be creating some mechanical problems down the track.
Yeah, he's jacked.
Yeah, strong boy. But yeah, that's like interesting from a okay, BJJ, mechanical trauma to the neck, or C, whiplash, any sort of neck injury.
Yeah.
Mechanics of the jaw versus neurological control of the jaw versus, are you chewing at night because of the airway versus are you chewing at night because you're stressed? Questions to ponder. Actually, off the back of that,
absolutely.
I read a paper that I thought was reasonably interesting, where they were showing that if you breathe in through your nose during that in-breath, there was an excitation of your limbic cortex, amygdala, and all those sorts of weird and wonderful areas that are associated with emotional tone. And the idea was that like that in-breath, if you're around a threat, it makes you more sensitive to assessing a stressful situation to see if it is something that you should be stressed about or not. And so they were saying that it was almost like a heightened firing of the anxiety centers with a in breath through the nose, whether that's heightening anxiety or making you more sensitive to an anxious stimulation, anxious environmental thing. I'm not 100% sure. But then
that's really interesting.
Yeah, because it was like rhythmical, so they didn't have the same activation in that limbic cortex on the exhalation. So it was just inhalation, and it was interestingly just inhalation through the nose. Through the mouth didn't have the same impact. So like if in the event of a panic attack, you want to let's calm that area down, breathe through your mouth versus through your nose may have a slight neurological benefit.
Component. But see, when I was training with the respiratory physiologist, which is a few years back now, their basic statement is never, unless you're running, and you should only be running if someone's chasing you. Great Viking statement, never run from your problems. You end up dead with an axe in your back, tired. Turn and face your problems.
That's very philosophical for you on a Monday afternoon, mate. I love it.
Yeah, it's just running. Running's not really my favorite
philosophy
thing.
Of
However,
Vikingism. Yep.
What the respiratory physiologists were basically saying is that you should always be breathing in and out through your nose. And most of the popular yoga type breathing that say in through the nose, out through the mouth is actually inappropriate. And of course it's adding to respiratory distress because of course the big volume of your mouth will dump carbon dioxide, and if you don't have any carbon dioxide you can't gas exchange properly, and of course this imbalances the pH of your bloodstream, and you get all forms of limbic excitation as you become acidic. So of course the paper that you're talking about is saying that we're getting the limbic excitation which should occur with excess cortisol and acidic activation just purely because of the nose breathing, which is kind of the opposite of everything that I was trained to be looking at for the last decade.
They're just registering that there's an increased activation in the area. So whether that's to improve activation of an area to make you more sensitive to social surroundings. So like, is this a stressful situation? No? All right, I can chill out then. Or, the guy running at me with a, broken bottle in his hand.
So my next question there then is that anything to do with the actual breathing, or is the breathing through the nose actually bringing in sense of smell, pheromone, or other chemical stimulus which would be affecting the amygdala and the limbic system in the first
You'd have to imagine so, because if there was no excess activity or increased activity with the inhalation through the mouth, and I know you've still got taste sensation and all that sort of thing, but you're still not getting it's all through the nose.
Most of your taste is actually your nose.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's why you hold your nose if it tastes yucky. Like when my nana would give me peas, I'd hold my nose and chew it. Disgusting thing.
Mate, we might have to disgusting. Peas are the best, buddy. What did peas do?
No, those things are horrifying.
That's your Viking ancestry coming back to...
Yeah. Like the worst thing is people who kind of put peas in Thai food, like you've got your Thai curry, and they stick peas in it. I'm like,
it's a perfect example of colonization at its best, mate.
That is horrifying. And my favorite one, and if Mum ever hears this, this is the horror stories of my childhood. Spaghetti bolognese with mixed vegetables, peas, carrots, corn, totally ruins it.
I really, my mum's never actually, my mum still thinks that I can't be trusted to walk down the street. Yeah, that's the problem with people who've changed your nappy. They always think you're an idiot, regardless of how many bloody pieces of degree paper that you've got hanging off your wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mum, gotta love her, exactly the same problem. Worst bolognese in the world. But anyway, to get back on track, I was wondering as well then, because if you do have that excitation of your limbic cortex through inhalation through your nose, how then, like if you've got a deviated septum, what that would then do to you chronically from an emotional tone point of view?
That's a really interesting thought, because of course one nostril will go one side of your brain, and so say your right brain is more open because of the deviation, and you're getting more pheromones hitting there. Maybe it's going to wind your brain up more and make you more sensitive to stress and being more stressed and anxious.
Because there's that importance of you've got a dominant nostril at certain stages of the it should swap
every 45 minutes, and it's meant to be one of the reasons, so I've been taught, as to signal the turnover response to stop bed sores and pressure sores from lying in bed. So of course, when you go to sleep at night and you become catatonic, if you stay in one spot too long, your blood deoxygenates and pressurizes into your tissue. So you actually have to move your body and become what I call a rotisserie sleeper to actually pump blood around your body. Otherwise, things will go numb.
See, I think I really, really need to get my nose sorted out, because I do have a deviated septum all the way over to the left, and I need to sleep on my left-hand side. Otherwise, I choke.
Can't breathe. Yeah. Go get your nose fixed. Let's find some decent ENTs. Any ENTs out there in podcast land?
See if they can make me more handsome, if such a thing were even possible.
Look, I wouldn't even care if they made you less handsome, as long as you breathe more effectively.
As long as I can breathe.
You're going to survive and entertain me for a lot longer if you can breathe.
Because ENTs are expensive, mate. Maybe I could just find someone to punch me in the nose at the right angle. I reckon. I was thinking about coming up to Queensland for a holiday soon. Do you reckon you could sort me out, mate? I think you could.
Look, I learned some really interesting things to do with finger cuts and a pump, and you just thread the balloon up the side of the nostril, and you tie it off against the hand pump from your sphygmo, and you just inflate it, and we slowly move the bone over.
Have you been trained in that? Do you know how to do it?
Yeah.
Sweet, I'm definitely coming up. I've had it done once, and I think it was by a guy that didn't know what he was doing. It felt like I was getting punched in the face, but from the inside.
Oh no! I think that's pretty much what it feels like.
Oh really?
I'm pretty confident that they did it right. It's not a comfortable thing.
It was violently horrible.
To do it, to do it twice. I mean, look.
But you know what? If it means I can sleep on either shoulder, I will do what you need to do, buddy.
Cool. We can do this.
You can blow a balloon up in my nose and we'll see what happens.
We should film that for the podcast, and we'll do a live feed on that
one. You may have to tie me down afterwards so I don't start swimming.
Fair enough.
Shit.
Yeah. No, I was going to segue from the feeding, and it was the discussion about horrible foods and things that we shouldn't be eating, into the other paper that we had mentioned last week, and the breast
Let's
biome.
talk boobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really excited when I saw that and was hoping to get a lot of deep information about it, but I was left, I can honestly say, a little disappointed. My kind of 18-year-old brain was kind of going, I want to think about boobs. Notwithstanding the really interesting statement about it, there being a actual breast biome all of its own.
Yeah, that's what caught my eye.
Yeah, absolutely. But The papers themselves, from that particular point of view, were kind of cool in one respect, but really didn't go out of its way to actually satisfy my curiosity about the breast biome. And what was interesting about it is they were really, in this paper, comparing the what I'd call the SAD diet, the Standard American, Standard Australian diet, which is kind of, bread, meat, 3 veg, not really what we'd call a highly nutritious diet in this day and age, but what large amounts of people are eating. Carbs, processed things, dairy products, etc., which are generally exposed as not being very healthy these days. And the diet they were comparing it to was the Mediterranean diet, or an analogous kind of version of that. And again, not a lot of poultry, white meat they talked about, fish, lots of olive oil. And what they basically found is that, and the point, I think, of the whole study was that they found differences in the bacteria colonies found in the breast milk and in the on the breast itself, in the creatures they were sampling, and that this was associated with increased risk, or the bacteria that they were finding on the SAD diet was associated with an increased risk in breast cancers. And that the bacteria such as lactobacillus with the Mediterranean diet was associated with a decreased risk, which was great, I kind of, as I said, I had some questions about this because in the first place they were using an analog, so they were using monkeys, specifically macaque monkeys, and then from there I'm like, well, fundamentally monkeys are actually not particularly omnivorous, okay? And so, they tend to be much higher fruit eaters, much more vegetables, a lot less meat in their first instance. They're not particularly carnivorous at that moment in time. And really, in that particular instance, is that actually a particularly good model for determining the actual bacterial count in the biome on the breast tissue?
It doesn't really translate, does it?
Well, not to my mind. There's sadly a bunch of people out there that they could have actually have run this experiment on. You take kind of 1,000 people and say, well, you're only going to eat on the Mediterranean diet, and another 1,000 women who are only going to eat kind of their standard diet, and you take breast tissue samples. Now, the interesting thing is how they actually ran it as the standalones. What they were finding it from was from women. So they got the whole idea to do this, to look at it, from women who were having either lumpectomy, breast reduction, or mastectomy, and looking at the bacterial colony that these people actually had, and then were theorizing whether there'd be a difference in the biomes in and around that, based upon changing their diet. Hence, they moved on to the monkey model rather than actually changing it in human beings. So, really interesting as an idea. I just don't think that when I looked at the original data that actually really proves it in a real model as against that's still open.
So it almost needs to be a SAD equivalent in a monkey.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you could probably just feed them kind of cake
and fried chips. There you go.
Yeah, pretty much. And realistically, they probably did. But, human beings are very specific in the fact that we are actually omnivorous. And I'm more than happy with the idea that the Mediterranean diet, which has a higher amount of, olive oil, fibrous vegetables, and they talk in these things about cereals, and that always pisses me off. Because, when they talk cereals in the Mediterranean diet from a traditional point of view, what we're looking at is a whole bunch of whole grains. When we talk about cereals these days, we're talking about a lot of really highly processed grains. And we eat a lot more cereals now, even in any variant of whether it's the Mediterranean diet or the SAD diet or anywhere in between. There's grain up the wazoo coming out of people in Australia, and we've got a lot of associations out there that tend to have let's say, sponsored connections with large companies like Kellogg's and Sanitarium, who are telling us that you need whole grains, and what they purport to mean by whole grains is things like sultana bran, which has next to no nutrition. Now, if you listen to some of the information coming out of the Noakes Foundation and South Africa, conclusively, some of those associations have basically lost court battles from pushing their agenda that high carbohydrate and low fat. They just lost that. That it's no longer a safe thing to be doing, and that the high fat, low carbohydrate diet is actually a whole bunch healthier, and that the whole thing's been a scam. And recently we had a chap in Tasmania who was censured there was a complaint put into APRA by hospital dietitians saying that his statements that he was making to his patients, I think the guy was a surgeon, and he was treating patients who were like needing knee surgeries, etc., and telling them that they needed to go off sugars, lose weight, get their diabetes under control to actually have surgery. And these people were getting healthier by following his dietetic plans, which had like a low carbohydrate diet, higher fat. And so he got shopped to his board, and it was upheld for like 2 or 3 years, and he wasn't allowed, he was banned from talking to patients about anything to do with nutrition. And this has only recently been overturned. So,
it's a scary world we live in.
Well, keeping in mind, there was no patient harm, no patient complaint. This was a disgruntled hospital co-worker who felt he was stepping on their patch by the looks of things. And I mean, I can't say for sure because arguably the patients were getting well, but that information that he was saying was in direct opposition to what the dietitians were talking about.
Okay. But hey,
that's not such a great
results
thing.
are results. But yeah, like I do agree with to a point, like, stick to your lane. We don't want massage therapists out there doing manipulations. I'd get up in arms about that. But by the same token, if the research is out there and you're trying to spread the good word, getting persecuted for it.
Yeah. I kind of, like, at a very basic level, let's face it, the average medical doctor by the average public patient is considered to have knowledge about health and nutrition, regardless of whether they do or not. So it's a bit of a rich call from a dietitian to be turning around and saying, and the board as well for that matter, that you don't have the qualification where you can talk to your patients about nutrition and dietetics. Because of course I've been spruiking to people like myself as a nutritionist for a long time that the only true people who know anything about nutrition is the medical association.
Yeah. Because they've been doing a stellar job with it for the last couple of 100 years.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so the biome of the breast is meant to be higher in lactobacillus at this moment in time is the big thing that I could take out of it. And realistically, the Western diet kind of has a variety of bacteria that we don't really seem to be wanting in the breast mammary ducts or on the skin. And as I say, highly associated with greater risks for cancer, according to this the study. And there's never a moment that we're not going to see, in my opinion, a benefit for lowering the amount of processed carbohydrates, lowering the amount of processed fats, lowering the amount of kind of junk food going into people, getting more fermented whole fiber vegetable matter going into people that encourages the growth of good bacteria in your body. It's got to be a good thing. We want the olive oils, we want the fish oils going in, we want more micronutrients, and the micronutrients are basically found in the wider varieties of herbs, spices, vegetable matter. Could you imagine that, say, sauerkraut, for instance, which, if we go back and look at both the Mediterranean regions and up into Germany, all the traditional healthy diets have had fermented foods like sauerkrauts, etc. going into you. And what do they have in them? They have different forms of lactobacilli that you're actually eating. What a shock and surprise.
Can you comment on boob microbiome and the impact that would have on bub development / overall health? Setting up the microbiome in a gut microbiome in the offspring?
Absolutely. So, well, I'll try and make some comment. So currently, we're going away from the original idea that Bub's gut was sterile. Okay, so in theory, what's meant to have gone on from data from the last kind of 40 years and is now being overturned is that the gut of the baby was sterile while in the womb, and that it came out and that it got coated in bacteria as it came through the vaginal cavity, and then that was upregulated from feeding on the breast tissue. And this study that we're looking at is a continued extension of that situation. Now, what's been shown is, of course, that the bacteria and lactobacilli of mum's biome is actually in the amniotic fluid and is being swallowed, from some point onwards, and that there actually is bacteria running right the way through that digestive tract. It's just not a complete biome. So if we look at it from that point of view, again, if you have a higher fiber, low sugar, good quality fat diet, you're likely to have a good appropriate pH to the vaginal cavity, and therefore you're going to have a better quality of lactobacilli in the vaginal cavity that will actually, of course, cover the baby as it's coming out. And then there's a higher likelihood of good quality bacteria on the skin of the breast, that when the baby goes on to feed, they're again ingesting that with the milk. Now, what I couldn't quite conclusively determine from the papers that I was reading when I was looking at what we were going to have a chat about today was I couldn't quite work out whether they were actually talking about it being in the lactiferous ducts, which I would presuppose, or whether it was just on the skin itself, and that was what was going to be ingested or otherwise. So if anyone's got a further comment out there or a better paper that I can actually look at to say, it's actually inside that's really where the big thing is. I'm all ears.
Boob biome.
I'm sure that there is
boob biome for skin biome. It's got to be out there somewhere for sure. Maybe we'll make that our thing for next week. We'll research boobs to the nth degree.
So continuing on in that, one of the things that I've been using, especially with young kids, is a product developed in New Zealand. And it's a type of bacteria called Streptococcus salivarius. And Streptococcus salivarius is a commensal mouth bacteria. Now, this particular probiotic releases a biocidin, I think is a good word for it, which actually kills off inappropriate competing bacteria that shouldn't be in the mouth. And so in a lot of the kids who've got, gingivitis and dental decay at a young age, eczema, sinusitis, a whole bunch of tonsillitis sort of things, I'm finding really good results getting them to suck this particular oral bacteria to decrease strep in them and other inappropriate bacteria. Now, this might be an antidote, of course, for mum's sad diet from early on and during breastfeeding, and maybe what I've been doing as a treatment for, the problems that I'm finding in a 6-year-old is from the diet and the breastfeeding and the inappropriate boob biome from, year one. Now, I don't know, but I'm certainly finding the product works, and we're getting good results with it. Now, it works in adults too, obviously. I use it, with patients who have chronic sinusitis, dental cavities, bleeding gums, and all sorts of fun things that can be caused by bacteria. Now, there's another more significant reason to make sure your oral commensal bacteria are working right, because if you've got issues with gingivitis and bleeding gums, you are much more likely to end up with problems in the heart, and you're at risk of a bunch of interesting situations. And so I became very aware of this with my, I have a congenital valve fault in my heart, and so they always want to give me prophylactic antibiotics before having any dental work done, including things like when I had my amalgams out. Now, basically, the thought process is that if you've got inappropriate bacteria in your mouth and you're bleeding and you start swallowing that blood and it gets into your system and runs through your heart at that moment in time, your chance of actually having heart attacks, strokes, or significant issue raises very dramatically.
Okay.
And so
wow.
anyone out there who's got some heart issues like that, you've got to be careful with what's happening in your mouth bacteria. And the mouth bacteria, again, are highly associated with risk factors for diabetes and heart disease anyway. So
I just thought of a really neat way that we can like complete the circle. Comment on healthy mouth bacterial levels and breathing through your nose versus mouth.
Okay.
See what we did there?
Yeah, okay.
Everyone listening? Brilliant.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons why I got into this particular product, because, of course, if you've got a inappropriate oral cavity from an acidic point of view, so mouth breathing itself increases the degree of acidity in the mouth, which is shown to kill off a lot of your commensal bacteria and leave some of your very inappropriate ones like strep, like potentially staph, clostridia, prevotella. All those ones tend to like to live in quite acidic environments, and your more commensal bacteria like to sit closer to a more neutral pH. So when your mouth becomes highly acidic, or you pour highly acidic things like, soft drinks, things with a very high pH, orange juice, for instance. I think orange juice is a real interesting one. The average person doesn't really realize quite how acidic that damn stuff is. It's got a pH of about 3.5.
I had a fun one over the weekend. I was at one of Beck's family housewarming. Anyway, their kids are growing up a little, quite preemie and retain primitive reflexes up the wazoo, so they're all running around a little bit mad. But
that's what my problem is.
Their mum and dad have done the right thing, and they're significantly limiting those kids' exposure to soft drinks and fruit drinks, which seems to be the family go-to norm for the rest of the family. Then so dad's of the kid's sister was trying to give the kid a glass of apple juice. And dad quite sternly said, "Do not give my kid any apple juice." Quite rightly so. And then I just listened for half an hour about this sister have a little quiet whinge and bitch session about how, isn't it terrible? It's just a bit of apple juice. It can't do that much harm. These kids are going to grow up and they're not going to have any soft drink until they're 20, and isn't that terrible? And it was just, what? What? Like, that's perfect.
The next thing she'll be saying is, that 16-year-old's been hard done by no cocaine or other mind-altering substances.
Could you imagine?
The poor deprived child.
No cocaine at all.
Like, it's a horrible extrapolation, and I had an argument kind of recently with another chiro out there, and if she's listening, you know who you are, who was basically telling me all things in moderation, and I was arguing that alcohol's a poison, and there's no such thing as moderation for a poison for your brain. Alcohol dissolves your brain. So, you could extrapolate to those poor children are being deprived. They cannot have alcohol. There's not a significant amount of difference. So, especially if you've got an interesting gut quorum, because say they had an interesting candida population in their gut, and you feed them a bunch of sugar, like apple juice, and some bread, and you let them loose. And so what you've got is a keg. And there's this really interesting phenomenon called autologous alcohol production. And basically you have certain types of bacteria and yeast in your gut, which is a keg, and you feed it the right things, including sugar and grains, and it's warm, and you put water in, and it ferments.
Brilliant.
And you literally, there's a guy, like it was a court case about it a few years back, where the guy was completely teetotal, never drank, ever, was pulled over DUI, drunken charge, without ever having had a drink, because his body was generating alcohol in his gut, which was getting into his bloodstream and was high enough to generate a positive
fascinating.
reading.
Wow.
Isn't it?
And because you'd imagine, that, like, I mean, if that's in a fully grown adult, I mean, and the body weight of a kid, I suppose, gut lining in a kid's going to be a bit smaller than gut lining in populations of Candida, but still, it doesn't take, Jesus. That's
And they're a lot more leaky. And further to that, just think of the autologous production of alcohol in a child, what it's going to do to the blood-brain barrier. They've got an undeveloped brain.
I'm sensing a whole podcast in and of itself. How to get drunk without drinking.
Without the fun part, supposedly.
Yeah, just skipping straight to brain damage.
Well, at any time I'm more than happy to kind of rabbit on about why alcohol's not really such a great choice for us. I mean, I get it's socially acceptable, and I get that a lot of people find that the sensation of their brain cells dying is a lot of fun. I mean, why not just go get choked?
Well, you'd be proud of me, buddy. At this party on the weekend, I just drank water. I was more motivated by I've got to shed about 1 kilo of weight for an upcoming BJJ competition. But the entire time I was thinking, if Scotty was here, he'd be proud of me.
There's your clap.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. It feels good.
I am. I think that's awesome. I think, functionally, I get that people drink, and I get that we consider it socially acceptable. But the problem with it is that lots of things are socially acceptable that may not actually be good for us. And I want everyone to actually understand that tipsy sensation where you get that little bit of disequilibrium, that is literally your cerebellar brain cells in the back of your brain that help control movement dying. They are literally screaming at you, please stop.
That's
and it doesn't matter how fun you think that is. That's what's happening.
Definitely going to do a podcast on that one, mate. I do like revving you up, mate. I better call it quits. I've got a migrainous patient sitting in the next room who wants some help.
No trouble,
mate. Glorious as always, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week when you've got an even thicker, bushier beard. Do you know what I found out today? I got a new Microsoft Surface to replace my dying Mac laptop, and the forward-facing camera that they've got that I'm using for these Skype video sessions are far too HD. I am losing some elastin in my face, buddy. I need to...
we got to do something with it.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in a H-bot, zap my face with a laser, whatever it takes. Yep. We got to do this. It could be the complete lack of sleep that I'm getting because my baby girl is teething yet again. But let's do what we can.
Awesome. Shall do.
All right, Scotty. Love your work.
You have a great day.
Thank you for watching. To learn more from Dr. Scott, visit our site at optihuman.com.au.